Hi, this is Jason Nickleby, Coordinator of Officiating Services with the Minnesota State High School League, and this is basketball officiating training tape number 2. Going to talk quite a bit about legal guarding position and our positioning relative to taking these types of plays, and then also our primary areas of coverage, focusing in on that on these plays. So, again, not picking on any one team or player or crew or official, just trying to learn from these plays and have a discussion as a crew in our pregame and throughout the game to handle these types of plays when they come up in our games. So with that, let's take a look at some plays. On this first play, notice we have a shot attempt right from the bench area, a rebound to the offense on the other side of the court, and then we properly initiate a rotation as the lead with the ball settling on that side of the court. So we do a nice job here of being wide and mirroring the ball. We close down on the rebounding action, which allows us to have a smooth transition into the rotation. And then we are stationary at the time of contact here on this play at the basket, which certainly is a foul. The only thing I would mention in our mechanics and in our primary coverage areas is just being cognizant of who is responsible for what and trying our very best to give that person the first shot if that's their primary coverage area. So when we initiate this rotation, notice that the new center works lower into their position, and she's in good position to view this action at the basket. And remember that when we have action in the paint, we're going to defer to the official on their side of the paint to have primary coverage responsibility for that action. So in this particular case, it takes place on the half of the lane that is closest to the bench area, which means we would give primary responsibility to this ruling to the center because it's on their side of the paint. Now, in this particular case, the lead has a very open look to this play, nothing in between her and the action, and has a good look at it, calls the foul. Certainly understandable. But what we want to try to do in most cases is remember who has primary responsibility for officiating a certain matchup, give that person first shot, and then if we don't have a foul and we have a good look at it and we're the only one that has it, then we can put air in the whistle at that point in time. But we do a nice job here of mirroring the basketball, closing down on the rebounding action, initiating a rotation, and then being stationary at the time of contact. So nicely done here by the lead in this particular play. On this one, I want to talk about legal guarding position and then help mechanics. So you notice in this play, we have a dribble drive to the basket, is guarded very closely, throws the ball up in the air towards the basket, kind of a desperation attempt, and the lead ultimately has a no call, as does the center, and we will proceed with a throw-in for the offensive team. So first, let's talk about legal guarding position. This defender has legal guarding position established and then maintains it legally by sliding down that lane line and does not move into the shooter. The shooter goes right down that lane line in a straight line, and the defender maintains her legal guarding position legally. They end up making contact right there at the end, but it's incidental in nature, and this is a proper no call for a defensive foul because she does establish legal guarding position and maintains it legally by going right down that lane line. So good job in that regard. Now, if you notice, if you look closely, this shot attempt, the ball is not touched by the defender. She just throws it up in the air and throws it out of bounds. So really, if we're going to no call this, we need to go with the fact that it wasn't touched by the defender, and therefore the the defensive team should get the ball for a throw-in in this case. Totally understandable for the lead to have a touching of the basketball in this situation. So center, in this case, you would come right to the lead, maybe give a couple of quick whistles to get the attention of the lead, come in and get information, and then we make the change. Now our mechanics on changing calls, out of bounds calls in particular, is we need to come right to that person, give them the information, and then the lead, in this case, the calling official, is going to put their hand in the air, blow their whistle, and then point the other direction to indicate the change. And only come if you have solid information that would lead to a change. Don't guess. Don't make things up. Don't go with, I'm not sure. If you're 100% sure, come with the information, and then we can make the change. In this particular case, if we're not going to call a foul, it was not touched by the defense, and therefore we should be using help mechanics to assist the lead in making the proper ruling as we move forward. On this one, we are going to have a fairly similar play to the last one off of an offensive rebound. We have initial legal guarding position established, 2 feet facing the opponent, no problem. Tries to move down the lane line similar to the last play. The difference in this particular case is the defender jumps into the shooter. And we describe that as going from A to B. So when we jump from one spot and end up in another and go through a shooter, we should have a defensive foul, and it is properly called by the correct official, in this case, the center, because remember, it's on this side of the lane. It's the center's responsibility. So this is excellent. This is exactly where we should be looking. This is an A to B foul. A is jumping, or the defensive player is jumping from position A to position B, a different spot, goes right through the shooter, and we properly have a shooting foul. The only thing to be picky is just close down a little bit towards the action, do your spot mechanics, and then we can go to the table and report. But this is well done. We're in really good position to see this action. We don't bail on that initial shot attempt. That is really good as well. So good job of officiating our primary coverage area hard and picking up this defensive foul for jumping from A to B and playing through the shooter. Well done. On the last 2 plays, we talked about legal guarding position and what that means and how to maintain it legally. Let's get into the rules aspect of it. So if you take a look at Rule 423, the rule for guarding, it talks about establishing initial legal guarding position in Article 2, that the guard shall have both feet touching the playing court and the front of the guard's torso shall be facing the opponent. That's how you establish legal guarding position. Now, you can maintain it after you've done that through Article 3, which says you may have one or both feet on the playing court or be airborne, provided the guard has inbound status. The guard is not required to continue facing the opponent. Okay. Third, the guard may move laterally or obliquely to maintain position, provided it's not towards the opponent when contact occurs, which is what we had in the last play. And also, we hear a lot from coaches that a player is still moving or they're not set. That's not in the rule. As long as they establish initial legal guarding position and maintain it legally, then the contact responsibility would fall on the offensive player. And that's why I want to bring this to your attention as we look at this play. The other aspects, of course, are the guard may rise or jump within their vertical plane, and the guard may turn or duck to absorb the shock of an imminent contact after they've established initial legal guarding position. So in this play, we have a defensive player that establishes initial legal guarding position, feet on the floor, 2 feet on the floor facing the opponent, and then she maintains it legally, similar to the other plays, by trying to move backwards and obliquely. And if you notice, when she does that, The contact is made by the offensive player in the chest, which naturally causes the defender's arms to come down. And then what we see then is contact made with the shooter with the arms, but this was caused by that initial chest contact from the offensive player number 34 into a legal defender. So we need to be careful on these. Do they have legal guarding position? Do they maintain it legally? Who's responsible for the contact? And then put that all together to determine whether the contact is legal or not. And we need to be careful about putting fouls on defenders when they have established legal guarding position and maintain it legally. And in this particular case, we have a defensive player who did that. Contact was initiated by the offensive player, which caused the arms to come down onto the shooter, which gave the appearance of a foul. So would have preferred a no call on this play. Glad that the call came from the center. That was the proper official to make the ruling on this play. But ultimately, I believe that we have legal guarding position that was established, maintained legally, and then we had offensive initiated contact. So the no call would be the proper call in the sequence. And I just want you to take a look at the guarding rules in Rule 423. Look that over. Look at each play that you officiate on the court with this lens in mind, and I think we'll be in really good shape judging these plays as we move forward. On this one, I want to talk about transition coverage, legal guarding position, as well as restricted area and secondary defenders. So first of all, when we're in transition, we're going to have the same coverage areas, primary coverage areas and responsibilities as we would in the front court, unless it's involving a secondary defender in the paint. So remember, if it's a primary coverage area not involving a secondary defender, we're going to draw a line right down the middle of the lane. Anything that's close to the center is going to be their primary. Anything that's closest to the lead will be their primary coverage responsibility. Now, anything involving a secondary defender in the paint, primary responsibility for ruling on that play is going to be the lead. So let's go to the rule regarding restricted area and secondary defenders. When we have an odd number player break, so in this case we have a 2-on-1 break, that makes this defender secondary by rule. Can this player take a charge? Sure, certainly they can. They just need to establish legal guarding position outside of the restricted area and then maintain it legally, including into the restricted area, and they can still take a charge. So we need to take a look at this defender. Does she get 2 feet on the floor facing the opponent and then maintain it legally? And remember, it takes the offensive player getting their head and shoulders past the torso of this defender to mean that they don't have that legal guarding position anymore. This is a really tough play, and it's almost a 50-50 play, so I understand the call of the block. The only thing I would point out is make sure we establish whether this defender is secondary by rule or not. Do they establish legal guarding position or not? Do they maintain it legally? And then whose primary responsibility is it for ruling on a play like this? And this is certainly a type of play that we would really benefit by pre-gaming as a group. On this particular play, we have a ball that's deflected, then deflected again, and the new offensive team gains control of the basketball, and the defender dives for the ball and grabs a hold of her arm and kind of undercuts her and is properly called for a foul. So first thing, remember that legal guarding position, no part of that definition indicates that it's legal guarding position to lay on the floor. So if we're on the floor and draped all over someone, that is not legal guarding position. Undercutting them is not legal guarding position, and that contact is illegal and should be assessed with a foul, and that's what we have here. The other thing I want to point out is if you take a look at page 89 of the Mechanics Illustrated, it indicates that we should have a long switch in this particular case. I know people have their own feelings about long switches and whether we should do them or not. That's currently the expectation in the Mechanics Illustrated. Could be looked at in the future, but that's the expectation at this point. And so notice we call the foul. We're going to come out to the reporting area, report the foul to the table, and then continue on to our new spot as the new lead, and the trail comes down and assumes the position of new trail in this case. And so we do a really nice job with this. It's very seamless, very smooth. And that's what I would just comment about relative to switching is whether we long switch or not. I think the key is looking smooth, not herky-jerky, looking like we know what we're doing, and having a quality switch and knowing where we belong really takes us a long ways towards establishing that credibility. So pregame this, talk about who's doing what, make sure we're on the same page, and if we do so, we're going to be in a really good spot and we're going to look good doing it. So well done here, not legal guarding position, clearly a foul, and then very well done on the switching, very smooth, under control. On this last play, I want to talk about last second shot mechanics at the end of the half. So in this case, right before halftime, notice that the center properly indicates to her crew that she is responsible or has primary responsibility for the last second shot. And you see that the ball is away before the LED lights illuminate. So this shot is good and properly counted. So we can talk about as a crew whether we're going to lock in the C and at what point. The bottom line is, as a crew, we just need to be on the same page about what we're doing to cover a last second shot. We just don't want 2 or 3 officials staring at each other, figuring out at that moment in time who's responsible for making a decision. That needs to be talked about as a crew well before we get to that point. So definitely something to talk about as a pregame topic. Locking in the C is the recommendation. Again, you can take a look at page 129 in the Mechanics Illustrated that discusses this topic. But locking in the C, allowing the lead to go back and forth, and then fill if we go in transition is really the recommended way to go. In this particular case, it puts us in really good position to manage this play. And the other piece is I like how the center takes a step towards the end line to rule on potential contact, as well as to give her a better sight line relative to scoring the basket or not. So good pregame topic for the crew. Talk about, are we locking in the C? Who's responsible for taking that shot? How would we communicate if there's any discrepancies and so forth? We just want to make sure we're on the same page on that mechanically well before it happens, because if we get to that point and we don't know, that's going to create confusion for the crew and the players as well. So we handled this really well in this sequence. Really well done. Center's in perfect position, scores the basket. Nicely done by the crew. Okay, that will do it for training tape number 2. Some good things to think about relative to legal guarding position, how to establish, how to maintain it legally. Good discussion topics as well for our crew relative to primary coverage areas, who's responsible for what, helps us lessen the number of double whistles. Not that they won't occur, but it really helps us to lower that amount. And then remembering how to handle last second shot mechanics as well, and having that discussion as a crew. So really good examples here. Nicely done by the crew in many of these plays, and hopefully these topics are helpful for you as we move into the winter holiday tournament season and into the new year. So hope you're all doing well. Travel safe, stay safe and healthy, and we look forward to seeing you out there in the new year.